Well, the Labor member for Bennelong is facing a tricky task retaining his seat at the looming election as a redistribution puts the Liberals ahead by the narrowest of margins. Crystal Wu spoke to the Labor and Liberal candidates for John Howard's old seat about how new suburban additions are shaking up their campaigns.
The seat of Bennelong stretches from Eastwood and Epping to Lane Cove and Hunters Hill.
We've got a huge Korean Australian community, a huge Chinese Australian community, Persians, Italians, who have all called this area home.
Jerome Laxale is the first-term member for Bennelong after Labor won by a slim margin of 1%. One of his main priorities is engaging with local communities and ensuring the best interests of small businesses are upheld.
So I've had the 3x spicy one before and that blew my face off. The 2x spicy is all right, but I think I'll go the carbonara. My curry one is not here. That's my favourite. It's very rare, but this will have to do.
A former small business owner himself, Mr Laxale says he understands the challenges they face.
Yeah, he's been around for quite a while, yes. He's very good. I like him.
To be able to draw on my experience as a local for 20 years, but as a local politician at the council level has been really invaluable.
32-year-old Scott Yung was endorsed as the Liberal candidate to win back John Howard's seat. At 27, he was the Liberal candidate in the 2019 state election, running against Premier Chris Minns.
My mum came from Shanghai and my father's from Hong Kong. My first home when I was born in 1992 was in public housing in Waterloo.
From the swimming pool in Lane Cove to the bridge above the shopping centre at North Ryde, Scott Young's face on a bright blue billboard is now a familiar sight for locals.
Graham, thanks for your support, mate. Really appreciate it. You're an absolute gentleman. What's your name? Marlene. Marlene, lovely to meet you, Marlene. Marlene, lovely to see you, Marlene.
Despite the outreach of his campaign, Mr Young insists securing enough funding remains a challenge.
I think as a candidate up against an incumbent member, we are always the underdog when it comes to funding and resources. We don't have the office or the staff necessarily to be able to have that outreach that a sitting member might have.
Mr Laxale's new campaign posters, however, breaks from tradition, swapping the usual Labor red for a more subtle teal.
Yeah, just trying to stay fresh, you know, modern. One thing you'll get from me is I'll work for local communities regardless of their political persuasion. I'm a very active and accessible local MP that sits with the Labor caucus.
The abolishment of North Sydney has changed the electoral landscape. More affluent suburbs like Lane Cove and Hunters Hill are now part of Bennelong, and the candidates say they may need to change their approach to resonate with voters in these areas.
I need to say hello to them and be as well known over there as I am here. So I'm known here, have been accessible here and delivered results here. I'm basically doing the same thing in those new areas.
I think certainly with inclusion in North Sydney, we're seeing so many great young families from areas like North Ryde, young professionals, and new suburbs such as Hunters Hill, Woolwich and Greenwich come into play. But the same applies. Any candidate like myself would go out there, work as hard as I can, and understand what challenges are prevalent to the people of Bennelong.
And the challenges are the same across the board.
Look, I've got a young family, so anything that's sort of beneficial to our family, education and housing, it'd probably swing us, I'd say.
It's just way too expensive. Way too expensive. Everything's just gone up in triples.
It's the rental part that's the hardest part. That's where I'm living with my mother-in-law and my fiancée at the moment.
And for the locals in Lane Cove, even securing a dozen eggs has proved to be a challenge.
How much is a dozen eggs nowadays?
It just cost me $7.
And it was just for the cage-free stuff.
That's why we can't afford rent. Yeah, scrambled eggs or rent. It's really where it sits.
Crystal Wu, Sky News, Sydney.